I asked you, Kim, why it had to be so mean, and I was just talking here with Bill Graham and Bob about an article which is in the October 20th issue of the Rolling Stone. I don't know if we can pick up the picture here, but it's a kid with a stick pin through his lip and a stick pin through his ear. Now, this is in the United Kingdom, but why do they do that kind of stuff? What a question, huh?
I know the answer.
Well,
Who knows? Wait, who knows? All right, wait a second.
It might well
why do kids stick safety pins? Now, who knows the answer? Raise your hand. Yes, Kim. Yes, Kim, tell the class.
They stick because they, same reason witch doctors put bones to their noses. Because they're silly.
Yes, Bob.
I think it might well be a kind of a space age, the same reason I might have had a ducktail haircut when Elvis came out. But the thing is, how many people want to do that now? When Elvis did it, millions of people wanted to do it. Now, I don't know how many people are going to follow this. I don't think very many are going to follow.
No.
None of the kids I talked to on the block have been going to the drugstore and buying any extra safety pins. So I tend to think, but it's a way to bring attention to themselves. They had a punk rock festival at the Palladium a couple weeks ago, and
right
it was there were about 1,500 people there. It's a 5,000-seat hall, so you can see it wasn't anywhere near filled. But there was a lot of media attention there. They had several local TV stations filmed it. They had a fashion show where they had people in bondage gear walking up and down, making faces at the audience. And
wait, let me have Kim haul out some of these pictures. Just, you know, give me the whole stack.
There you go.
Just give me the whole stack, because I can show them, and then
Right
Bob can talk. These are photographs from the Palladium?
Yes, John Van Hammersfeld did them.
well, they show these on the air as a serious evening by these kids. And if you were at the show, the kids who were in the audience were throwing ice at the people on stage, hooting and hollering at them. So it was taken largely as a gag. But the media has kind of picked up on all these pictures because there's nothing else particularly happening in rock and roll today. And rock and roll has always been kind of an interesting symbol of youth and teenage rebellion. So it's attractive every once in a while to come in and kind of zero in on it. But I don't think the kids themselves are believe it or support it.
You've been the critic, the rock critic for the LA Times for 7 years. You've seen a couple of trends come through. Is this a trend or a fad?
I think it's a fad. The idea of the costuming. But
I don't even know if we can show these.
Yeah, that's cool.
At this fashion show.
The Trash Twins.
I haven't seen them. The which?
The Trash Twins.
Oh, what a fitting
They're
name.
from Yorba Linda, California, for real.
Okay.
A couple years ago, there was a glitter trend in rock. Where people put on tuxedos and so forth. And at this fashion show, I saw one of the kids who was at a show 2 years ago at Santa Monica with the tuxedo. He had taken the tuxedo off, and I guess got it out of the closet, turned it around, ripped it, and now he was a punk rock thing. But the thing that we can tend to over-exaggerate the fact of the cartoonish elements of the makeup. The thing that's interesting about it is that it has captured all this media attention, and it's made record companies now very aware of young bands again, instead of relying on the older, refined, polished bands. There was like no teenage expression in rock and roll, really. It was the 20s and 30s. It was getting away from the kids, and now they're afraid of this. They're saying, well, if this is going to catch on, we've got to start signing up some of these bands. And so you're getting a lot of bands who would never have gotten a contract 2 years ago, like the Jam, perhaps. They might have said, well, wait and get more polished. And by that time, they might have lost perhaps some of their steam. And the Jam's a very good band. So some good bands might come out of this. And it's good to have that personality back in rock and emotion rather than just musicianship and technical ability, which is the big prize.
But from what I've read about it, there's no music. It's just chords and ranting and raving and put-downs.
No. It's more than that. I think it's a B movie on record. I feel it's a vacuum because we're living in a fragmented 70s where there's so many different things happening that there isn't one Beatles or one Elvis Presley. It hasn't come yet. And here we are almost in 1980. And we're still looking over our shoulder to the 60s. And one of the problems in punk rock is that it is derived from the 60s musically. But that isn't bad.
Well, the rock and roll got its start in the mid-60s as a form of social statement, revolution. I'm not going to do what everyone else, I'm not going to dress, I'm not going to wear what everybody else does. But now, in peacetime, there's no Vietnam and there's no Mr. Nixon. And they must have some rebellion, and I think more than anything else, in my opinion, that the punk rockers are saying, I'm not going to rebel against my parents or against Washington. There's nothing to rebel against right now. But I'm not going to do what my big brother did. I'm not going to listen to the same music. He went on his own when he was 15, 16, 17. I'm going to go on my own when I'm 15, 16, 17. A lot of young people today are turning from grass to booze because mom and papa are smoking grass and They used to drink, and I didn't want to drink, so I smoked. Now they're smoking, I'll drink. And there's that desire to make their own statement, which they were bigger brothers and sisters did 10 years ago.
What do you think the record companies are going to do with this?
Spend a lot of money, foolishly, in many cases.
I don't think so. I think that they're each going to sign one group. Everybody's going to have their house, their token group. And they're going to throw the thing out and see what happens. And what generally happens is it's LA and New York, and sometimes Boston, and sometimes Cleveland, Ohio. And then if it can cross over to other type of radio format, then maybe they'll spend money. But there's so many safer bets in today's music than wasting time with punk rock.
How many radio stations are playing this kind of music in the United States now? Do we know?
There's, I would think, almost none. Maybe like 1 or 2 in New York, 1 or 2 in LA. Oh, but see, punk isn't selling in America. There's probably more Linda Ronstadt albums and Fleetwood Mac albums sold in Burbank this week than there have been punk rock records in the whole country this week.
So let the man finish. Ken,
okay.
you don't have to get all excited. We have a lot of time here.
All right.
So it's something that
Probably more Montavani was sold in Burbank this week, and then the others down the line.
the other ones are brought in after dark. But punk rock is not. It's not a sales factor here, but it's happening. The fact that it's happening so, even in England, it's still bands like Zeppelin, Genesis, Yes, traditional veteran rock and roll bands are still dominating the charts out there. Diana Ross, I think, has the number 1 record in England right now. So this even is a minority sales factor there, but it's something that might happen. And the record business has been looking for so long for another Beatles, another Elvis, and so they've got to take a chance in it.
But wasn't there a record in the UK called "God Save the Queen" that was
Sex Pistols.
yeah, the Sex Pistols. That was a parody of her wealth and everything. That became the #1 selling record on
It
some
was timed to come out at the same time as the Jubilee. Yes, as a matter of fact, yes. It was a parody.
There's a record called Anarchy in the UK by the same band. But you know, and it's very aggressive and tough-minded and so forth. But if you go back and listen to some of the records in the 50s and the 60s again, I think you have parallels. They're saying different things now because you have to say different things in order to catch somebody's attention. But it's not an unprecedented. If you listen to Jailhouse Rock 20 years ago, that might have sounded to a bunch of people sitting around a late-night show as something similar to what the Sex Pistols might be doing now, you know, in form, not actually in theme and stuff.
But if the record companies pump a lot of money into it, as Bill suggests, or promote it extensively, they stand to make a pretty good buck from it if it catches on, huh?
Of course. Oh, yes. Especially today, I think we're all aware of what's happened in the music industry. If 7, 8 years ago, a big record was 500,000 units. Today, a group sells 5 million units, and there are maybe 40, 50 artists that every time they put out an album, they will sell in excess of 1 million units. So if you have a hit today, you're going to make a lot of money, and so will the record company.
Yes, sir.
The Runaways, who I produced for Mercury Records, sold 70,
One of whom will join us, Joan
yes,
Jett.
True. 75,000 first album, 75,000 the second album, but in Japan we sold over 400,000 pieces. And in that market we had 2 gold records. At one point we had 6 records in the top 50, and yet over here a lot of people don't know who Joan is when she walks down Sunset Boulevard.
What does that say about the music, though? If it's doing well in the Orient, if it's doing well in Europe and the UK, and not doing well here, is it simply because we don't know about it, or because, as Bill suggests, it's a quiet time now, and young people, youth in this country, simply don't respond to whatever it is that music is
It doesn't
saying?
use
They may have
over
a bigger
here.
social problem than we do.
Tom?
I beg your pardon?
Japan may have a bigger social problem
Right,
Well,
than we
they
do.
that's
have
what I'm
more
saying.
kids. Because over here, I think people who buy records are older. Over there, people stop buying rock records when they turn 21, and they leave the rock and roll to the kids. So people like the Bay City Rollers are massive over in Japan also, while people here in their 30s buy Fleetwood Mac and Eagle records, which might say something for some of these foreign markets.
And also, radio stations are very conservative in America on what they're going to play. They don't want to take a chance on playing anything that's going to turn off any listener. You know, so they want to have something that appeals to someone 15 and 35 and 45. For instance, Bruce Springsteen, who was a very powerful rock and roll figure, and he was on the cover of Time magazine and Newsweek. He didn't get played on major change because they thought it was too powerful a record. So a lot of this new wave music isn't going to be heard unless people go to clubs. There's got to be kind of a groundswell of it. It's going to be a commercial.
What do you mean by so powerful a record?
Well, it was too hard to digest for a person who's used to listening to a Captain Tennille record, who wants real simple, soft, kind of like background wallpaper music. Springsteen was too tough, so it would make them
Tough in terms of his language, his ideas?
Just they couldn't understand
The
what's going on.
intensity.
The intensity. They probably could. You'd listen to it and say, "Well, that sounds like a kind of noise," and so they wouldn't take the time to explore it.
But punk